Hello, hello, everyone. Oh, excited as always to bring you another edition of the Miss Texas Show with your co-host here, Melissa Santana. Always excited, like I said, to have a great guest, to be able to have a wonderful conversation. And today we are going to have the pleasure of speaking with Jackie Gadsden, who is going to be telling us all about her wonderful career and all those wonderful things. But I want to say first that she is an advocate for children and being able to help those children, especially when they don't always have a voice themselves, being able to communicate with the parents of those children and really helping in that, in all those efforts and in that fight that often children, there's not a lot of people that always step up to that. So today we are going to have Jackie on the show, and I look forward to you tuning in.
The TheMsTexasShow is a voice of hope for victims, survivors, advocates, and community leaders against gender-based violence to share their stories and resources. We began showcasing life in Texas. Today we are impacting lives not only in Texas, but also around the world. Under our segment Military Time, we run this segment in partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We invite military and veterans who have overcome traumatic events to share their experiences during and after their military service. Under our beauty segment, we invite fellow pageant winners and contestants, artists, musicians, actors, models, and dancers, and last but not least, our survivor leaders from family violence, sex trafficking, sexual assault, stalking, and other traumatic events who are ambassadors for these causes to share their lives and the impact they have made. To become a guest on our show, email us at msusatexas@gmail.com. If you would like to support victims and survivors of gender-based violence, make a tax-deductible donation to Hope Fix Global at www.hopeyxglobal.org. The Ms. Texas Show.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Miss Texas Show. Again, we are always excited for you not only to be able to tune in, but for us to be able to learn from incredible guests and individuals who are willing to share their story with us. And so today's guest is no less of an honor and pleasure to have. So we have Jack Quillen, Hennigan, Gadsden is known professionally in the state of South Carolina for her work with families and children involved in the foster care system. Her career includes over 45 years of experience in human services. Literally, like, no small feat. I feel like I need to salute that alone. She is a licensed social worker and completed a master's degree in individual and family development. She completed 138 hours toward a PhD in human services with a degree in family studies and intervention strategies. Mrs. Gadsden was chosen to serve on the governor's task force in working with a team of professionals to improve the foster care and adoption process in South Carolina. Mrs. Gadsden has also published 3 books for children: There's Room, which depicts the grief process that children experience when they're transitioning to new environments, and Secrets, which is a book that aids in the therapeutic process that empowers children to talk about secrets that cause harm, and No King for a Princess, which focuses on girls who need to create a positive relationship with their fathers. Mrs. Gadsden actively participates in the Foster Parent Conference yearly by providing training classes for statewide foster parents, and she conducts many workshops and seminars regarding the plight of children. And so with that, also affectionately known as Jackie. So with that, it is literally nothing less than an honor to have you on the show. I just appreciate you taking the time just to come out, just to, like I said, just to even share with us. And so with that, the first question I would just love to ask you is just, can you tell us a little bit about you? Let the viewers get to know you. Who are you? Behind all of those incredible achievements,
Yes.
Some of your journey, what has led you here today?
Yes. Well, the real education is in the trenches with the children and the families I work. Academic achievement is important to me, but not the first. I can clearly say that most of my education came from my connection with people and how I served them. So that's the beginning. But if I had a story, I would go back to when I was 10 years old. I was a barefoot child. I used to love to go barefoot. My father used to tell great stories, and I would be the one following him all the time. And he was in the garden, And he kept telling me to put shoes on. I didn't want to put shoes on. So I'm following him. And I step on the bumblebee. And the bumblebee stung me. And I fell over. And my father looked down at me and he said, "You see, gal, it's the little things in life that'll throw you." And I didn't understand at 10 years old what he meant. I'm down there fussing about a bumblebee. And the bumblebee hurt like hell. And I'm thinking, what is he talking about? Years go by, and any life-altering event can turn your world upside down. So stepping on bumblebees is something that can change your life, and it gets under your skin. And sometimes it's the little things that will distract you and take you away, and you don't know that it's permeating in you. And it was something that happened, a small thing that you dismissed. Stepping on bumblebees is what I call it.
Wow, thank you. So
Yeah.
yes, and I think that just that incredible depiction of how like what that entails, and just it's just such incredible imagery too for like a lot of the difficulties that we might face in life, and things like that. So clearly, you said, and that was from your father, correct? You said
Yes,
so. Yeah.
from my father.
Yep. And so that's incredible. So what I'm gathering is that I don't know if he always gave those kind of nuggets, if that was one of the ones that you took away the most. But then tell us more about that then. So like what was life for you like growing up? Like how was, what I mean, what kind of things did you, overcome, endure, struggle with, or deal with basically?
Well, as I began to do my work and focused on children, I never knew why. I never knew why I was so focused on kids. But in my own memory, I have to take you back to the age of innocence that sometimes we forget, to go to that happy place when you know that you were innocent, that life was full of laughter and joy. And you don't know anything about any traumatic events. You're just skipping along. You don't know. And because you don't know, you look at the world in awe and in such magical ways. And I was in the second grade. And I remember my mother and father befriended this couple, and I felt comfortable with them. And I had to walk by their house coming from school. And particular day, I had to go to the bathroom. And this is way back in the second grade. And when I knocked on the door, I'm gonna call him Mr. P, came to the door, and I said, "Can I use your bathroom?" And he said, "Yes." You had to go outside because of the outdoors bathroom. I still have them in the city too. It was an outdoor bathroom. I can still remember the smell. And I went into the bathroom, and I can even remember sitting on that toilet that smelled like urine, because it has a distinctive smell, swinging my leg. I was still innocent. And he opened the door, and he showed me a 50 cent. And I grew up never getting allowance and money. We worked. And so he said, "I give you this 50 cent if you let me feel your leg." And so I stuck my leg out and let him feel it. And he said, "If you come back, I'll give you some more." Well, 50 cents for me was big money. And back then you could get, on my way home, I stopped at this little store and I got me 25 cents worth of 2 4-penny cookies and a 25-cent pack of paper, because I always like to write, and paper, and I took it home. And I didn't stop by again, but it kept bothering me. I wanted to go back and get another 50 cents. And that was the bait. The shiny things for our children are usually the bait. Football tickets or whatever, Boy Scout leader. It's the shiny thing. I went back and I said, "You said you were going to give me another 50 cents if I came back." He said, "Yeah, come on in." And this time he went further. I don't have to do the details, but my innocence was lost that day. I told my sister, he gave me the 50 cents and told me not to tell anybody, that this was a secret. So my sister knew I had the 50 cents, and I wouldn't share it with her. And she said, I'm going to tell Daddy what you did. You let Mr. P feel you. Well, a little bit more than that. And she told my father. And my father to me was bigger than life. I lost him when I was 16, but he was everything to me. He was a storyteller. He picked a guitar. He always had fun things to do. And I was his little fat girl that followed him and listened to the stories. I listened to the stories. And my father didn't whip. He believed in lecture, but I got whipping that day because I didn't tell. And it shut my mouth because I felt that I was at fault, that it was something I did wrong. Now, they did something, but they never talked to me. Remember, I would walk into the room and they would hush. And I could hear pieces where my father must have done something to Mr. P, but I don't know what. No one ever told me. But what that set me up for was a relative molestation later. And I'm still quiet. Now I know not to tell because I got a whipping. I know not to tell. So the secret was buried deep. But you don't know. I'll call it the soul. Some people call it the subconscious, but I rather call it the soul. The soul documents everything that happened to you in your life. It's there and it comes up when you least expect it. Matter of fact, what's documented in the soul usually shows up in the behavior. And that's with our children too. It goes very deep. And unless you can go into the soul or the subconscious and unravel some of the pain, the good and bad is documented there. And sometimes they have conversations there in your soul, in your subconscious, and you act off of them. And so I was this little girl that was overweight and fat and always liked to read books and stories. So after that happened, I became introverted, never thinking that one day I'd be using my voice. But I was introverted, so I started reading books. And my fifth grade teacher, which moves you forward to how it impacted my life, already had what I know now is low self-esteem, but it wasn't identified and nobody diagnosed anything. In our culture, you keep secrets. You don't tell your business. Keep that in the family. Don't tell anybody that you're hurting. So the muzzle was put on me and I couldn't talk, but I was a talking child. My mother used to tell me all the time, shut your face, because I always had something to say. And I asked questions. I asked spiritual questions that got me in trouble about God. So I asked questions all the time. But in the fifth grade, I still had that inquisitiveness about me. But the fifth grade teacher was very impactful on me. She also put a muzzle on me. So the beginning of my innocence was shutting me down. Had to shut me down. I had a fire inside of me with so many things I wanted to say. I had an understanding about some things, but I had questions. And nobody would want to entertain those kind of questions. And again, a little bit, my mother never, ever talked about sex in her whole life. I was 15 before I saw my period, and the school nurse told me about it. I didn't know where babies came from. So there was still an innocence about me, even though that traumatic event happened and I took it and I stuffed it. I actually forgot it. It was suppressed for years before it came back up. I never told anybody. I kept the secret. But the fifth grade teacher, I was talented in learning poems and talking about them. And this play I tried out for was Lady Windermere's Fan in the fifth grade. And I tried out for the part. And at the audition, all the children was clapping, give it to Jackie, give it to Jackie. And I was excited that I knew the part by heart. And she turned to me. It was the leading lady's part. And she said to me, you're too fat for the part. And I took that inside. That same teacher told me when I wanted to be an astronomer, and I didn't see how important that was until I saw Hidden Figures. And I said, oh my God, I wish I knew about them when I was in the fifth grade. Because she told me, you can't be an astronomer. You're not college material. And all of that, I internalized. That became my mantra. Less than, not meeting. Because words can lower the ceiling of the potential of a child. Just words. You know that old saying about sticks and stones may break my bones and words will never hurt me? It's not true. Words can cripple you for your life if you never bring them out and look at them. And I took all of that in that I was less than. In high school, I didn't try to apply myself, but I was auditory learner. So I could sit in the teacher's class and I could pick up what she says and pass the test minimally. Didn't matter. I didn't care because after all, I was not college material, according to the 5th grade teacher. So I took that into high school, didn't try to apply when I graduated. And I still wasn't able to talk. My first marriage, I got married out of rebellion. I wanted to be free, and I married into domestic violence. I was a setting duck for it because my self-esteem was not there. I didn't know I had a voice. I read a lot. I read a lot of books. In 5th grade, I was reading How Green Was My Valley. I read Heidi, Little Women. And I was one of these crazy people who loved Shakespeare. So I got lost in the books and I traveled in the books. Now at 9 years old, I could take care of a house. My mother was a domestic worker and she would take me with her. So I learned how to take care of white children and wait on white people while I watched my mother do that. And it was strange to me because I would see my mother loving on white kids who call her Mama too, or Mama Ada too. But when my mother got home, the gentleness that I saw her give those white kids didn't come with her. So I had 2 mamas. My mother sang lullabies to the white kids, but I never saw her sing a lullaby to us. And I had that question in my mind, why wouldn't she sing lullabies to us? I learned much later that she had to teach her little Black kids to be stronger, that it was a double standard because those white kids was privileged. And she showed the love to them, but at home, she came home, get those clothes off the line. Don't put up an ironing board in here, it was work. And the mantra in my house was, a man don't work, he don't eat. And that's what I grew up in. But I kept looking at my mother and I wanted what she was giving those kids. I was the emotional child. I'm not like my siblings, and I know that. I was the crybaby also, very emotional. And I always look at things at the glass half full instead of half empty. But not knowing that I had this secret buried deep down inside that was also giving me marching orders in my life. I could go on because I'm 75 years old. So there's so many stories along the way that tell you about the impact. But one I got to talk about is after I got divorced, I was 26 years old and had a daughter that was 5 going on 6 years old. And I take a risk here in exposing this, but this is my story. And I have to be authentic about it. After my divorce, I did not know anything about marijuana, anything. And a group of friends was over, and there was a man down the street that was fussing about somebody had been in his stash. And they told me who he was. And I said, well, what is a stash? And they said, well, he sells marijuana. I said, what is that? Weed, reefer. And so they were schooling me. And I was 26, but these kids was younger than me, and they knew more than me. And I said, what does it look like? And they said, well, it looked like grass. Well, I remember my little girl went in the empty house between our houses, and she had this big 2 bags of grass, I thought, all over her. And I brushed her off and dumped it in the ground, and that was his stash. Well, I told them that, and they said, what did you do with it? I said, it's out there in the yard. I threw it in the yard. They ran out in the yard, and they got it, and they came back. And they rolled me my first joint. At that point, I had no aspirations in life at all. I was 26, divorced, smoking my first joint, and my desire was to be an old lady sitting on the front porch with a corncob pipe full of marijuana. That was my aspiration for life. I was going to do it too. But I was reading all kinds of books. I was reading Edgar Casey, how to read poems. I just got interested in all kinds of things reading it. And so in the setting when I smoked, all my inhibitions was let loose. So I'm philosophizing with people. So I'm sitting there talking, and I'm talking about reading poems, and I would make up stuff because I had that imaginary mind. I would make up stuff. Oh, let me see your hand. Oh, I see danger, all that kind of crazy stuff like in Whoopi and the Ghosts. I'm doing that. And they listening to me. They are listening. And a girl that was sitting there was going to college at Allen University. And she said, Jackie, I got to go and register for my classes. Would you take me up there? From my house to Allen University was about 15, 20-minute drive. I was 28 now. And I was wild. I was partying. I had no aspiration whatsoever. Because after all, I wasn't college material anyway. So on the way up there, she started talking to me. And she said to me, Jackie, you know, you're real smart. Have you ever thought about going to college? I said, girl, please. I'm not college material. See, that's what soul puts up stuff in your behavior and the way you're thinking when you're talking. You don't know where it's coming from. But that tape was in me. And as it was in me, I said it. I repeated it. That means I believed it. And she said, I don't know all the words she said. Her name is Helen Moses, and I always talk about her wherever I speak. By the time I got to the campus with her, she talked me into the registration line. And I whispered, and I'm saying to her, they're not going to let me in here. And she said, yeah, Jackie, they will. You finished high school. I said, yeah, but my grades were not all that good. She said, they'll let you in. I walked away with the BEOG grant. And because I was 28, the school offered me a job in the dormitory, because at this time I'm working with different jobs. I'm doing home health aid. I thought I wanted to be a nurse, just not grounded at all. But I was working with clients at that time that were sent home to die and teaching death with dignity. During that time, they call it human resources and home health services. They call it hospice now. But that's what I did. And even though I didn't know that it was going to be part of my journey and my destiny, but I always connected with people that needed somebody, and especially children. So when I got in the line and they offered me to be a dormitory counselor, number one, to keep the boys at the dorm, and I would not have to pay my any tuition, only buy my books. And I said, yes, I'll do it. Well, my daughter was 8, and I had a home, already bought a home at 23. I didn't have real estate since, so I boarded up my house. I moved on campus. My mother, who lived close to me, took my daughter, and I would see her on the weekends because I had to stay all week in the dormitory. And then I would have weekends off. And if I didn't, I'd bring her to the campus with me. Well, this is the story. The first semester, I made all A's. Second semester, made the dean's list. Where the teacher wouldn't let me be in a play, at Allen University, I wrote a play called Struggling for Freedom. And the university, my humanities class, took my play on tour in Columbia, South Carolina. We went all over in the AME churches and did my play. 25 characters. And the 5th grade teacher wouldn't let me be in a play. It's not important, though. I graduated cum laude. I started a dance group on the campus. It's not important. It's not important. You'll find my name 1979 among who's who colleges and universities. It's not important either. The important part is Helen Moses, in a 15, 20-minute ride in a car, changed the course of my life. The words she said set me on a different path. She didn't live to see me attain a lot of things that I was able to accomplish. She was a young girl, died in a diabetic coma. So my point to telling the story about Helen is that she took 15 and 20 minutes with me, changed my life in a whole different direction. and she never lived to see it. So our quest in life is that you don't have to see the fruit come from the tree. You just plant the seed. She planted the seed, and she caused a ripple effect in me that I must give back. That's why I tell the Helen story, because the Helen story saw something in me that I did not see in myself. That's the basis and the foundation of me moving forward. Made a lot of mistakes, full of passion, wanted to change the world. All of a sudden, there was a fire took place in me about children, still not knowing about the little girl inside of me that was so damaged and traumatized, still not understanding that. First, I was on a track to be a nurse. I couldn't be that because I'm empathic. So if you were sick, I would feel your pain. I'm still like that. I could feel it. And that's why I was successful with children, because I could feel their pain. Not still knowing that the little girl in me had knowledge of their pain. Whew, that's a piece. And when I began to develop my skills in working with children, which took me on different tracks of work in different places, and said, no, that's not me. That's not me. I don't know. I left Millen's Head Start and went to DSS, Department of Social Services, thinking I would make more money. That's a folly. You'll never make more money in Department of Social Services, but you'll give a lot. You'll give a lot. And that's when I started working with the kids that were traumatized. Had my first murdered child when I was a rookie. And I began to learn from the children. Now, academically, I was excelling, but I was working with a bachelor's degree at that time. And much later, I decided to go for a master's. But my experience at DSS began to lay a pathway for my destiny, which I did not have knowledge of. But I started working with the kids. Now, the first thing I started working with was families that were still intact. And you didn't want the children to come into care. I loved it because I got a view of the family setting that the child was in. I went on vacation and came back after a week, and my supervisor had moved me. And I had projects going on with all my families. She moved me and put me in foster care. I went in the bathroom and cried because I didn't want to leave my families. And I didn't want to do foster care. But something else was ticking. There's a drum beat that goes on in all our life, and we don't know we fall in the rhythm. We get off track sometimes. And that was part of the rhythm for me to get into foster care, to meet these children. Because after all, the child in me recognized them, but I didn't recognize the child in me and why I could relate to them so much. It's all through my casework. I was always a radical, always getting in trouble with a supervisor. I'd walk into a meeting that we were staffing a child's dilemma, and I'd put the child picture on the table. And I'd piss my supervisor off. Why you gotta do that? I said, because we push papers all the time. I want you to know that this is blood and flesh we are talking about. I was always that way, but I didn't know it. Now I can talk about it in my 70s. I was always that way, radical. And getting people pretty pissed off at me about the children because I dared to ask the hard questions. Now, one of the trouble that I had was working with perpetrators. I had to work with these parents that hurt the children. And I had an attitude about it. And I had not gotten my own therapy. And I would tell everybody, now I have to backtrack here and now I have to say something. And it's about Black people in bondage. I will not use this opportunity without saying it. Our culture is in post-traumatic stress disorder, the whole culture. Over 400 years of suppression and oppression caused a genetic coding imbalance that was full of so much pain that it affected generations from now, even though the chains had left the body. It didn't leave the mind and it didn't leave the soul. So the repercussions of slavery and its effect on us is in the culture, and we will not seek out therapy. And we needed counseling more than any other culture on the face of the earth, because the color of your skin cannot be changed. And that's post-traumatic stress disorder in a cultural effect in our whole family. We all have it. We all have it. It's in our families. And we've got to now turn into our communities, look at ourselves, pull ourselves up out of the effect of slavery and what it has done to us, so that we can become enlightened on how we can build our communities to a better place. I got to that through my experience. My father was the son of a slave. I'm a granddaughter of a slave. First time, I'm going to change slave and say enslaved, the enslaved man, because they were never slaves in their spirit. They were enslaved. And being enslaved is different than being a slave. But your identity and your heritage and everything was taken away from you. First time I saw my father cry, I was 8 years old. I thought he was bigger than life. The police found my brother and other black kids, boys, playing in the wrong place. And I'm sorry, playing in the wrong place. And they gathered all the black boys up, brought them to the families. Brought my brother, who was 10, and the police told my daddy, I want you to beat him. And my father said, yes, I'll beat him. I'll beat him. He said, no, I want you to beat him in front of me until I tell you to stop. But I'm witnessing this. I'm 8 years old and I am witnessing this. And my father beat my brother till the police said stop. And I watched this white man take his pants and pull up in front of him. Keep that boy off that hill. Next time I'll take him. And when he left, my father fell to his knees and grabbed my brother by the shoulders and cried. And he said, if I didn't beat you, they would have took you out of here. That was the first time I saw him cry. He never talked about his experience. He would not take pictures. And today I always wondered why he never talked about being the son of a slave. But in my spirit, I think I know why. There's nothing to talk about. You lived it. You lived it. What you going to talk about? It passes through like clouds. It's like dark clouds and light clouds go through. So how do you pull all that together? Then I realized that I had to get therapy. Now here's me. I went into the therapist. I watched this man for 10 years with my foster children. As I took them to him, I got involved with what he did. And I watched him for 10 years before I said, I'm going to get therapy. Because I'm part of Black folks too. You don't tell your business. I believe that too. So I went in, I had $350 and I gave to him. I said, when this run out, I'm gone. Really? Really? That's what I did. He said, okay, let's see what we can do. What you want to work on? I said, well, I want to work on my weight. I always wanted to lose my weight. Okay. So he talked to me real nice. And therapy went on. Then he started peeling that onion. He started going back and wanting to know my childhood. I told him some things, what I could remember, because I really couldn't remember this anymore. It was suppressed. And people don't want to believe that you forget those things. You do, you suppress it. It's down in your soul, though. It's there. And if someone dare to ask a question, like I ask kids a question now. And the reason why they said, why are you so successful with kids? Because I asked them one question. Tell me what happened to you. I don't want to know what's in the record, what a social worker wrote. I want to know the perception of that child. What happened to you? I gave them voice. Tell me. And they started talking to me. When I went to therapy and I'm dealing with stuff, one day I was driving to a foster parent house and the memory of that bathroom came back to me in the car. And the smell of it was in the car. It was as if it was right there. It scared the hell out of me because my soul was giving a details to me. Second grade. I called the therapist up and said, what are you doing to me? He said, Jackie, come in, come in. And I went in and I was able to tell every detail, even about the whipping, even about feeling shut down, even about being muzzled, learning how to be quiet about my pain, but I could identify with Charles' pain. And when I discovered that, and thinking about my cousin that did it too, was a grown old man. And I used to tell my mother, I don't want to go riding with him. Listen to your children. I don't want to go riding with him. Because as soon as I got in the car, his hands was all over me. And I wouldn't tell because I remember the second grade. Right. And so, I don't know. I can't tell you how old I was. I'm thinking between 40 and 50, or maybe 53, when I got the therapy and realized what had happened to me. Wow. Now I try to tell family, but family don't want to hear. Right. Get over that. Move on. So I learned to tell children, you'll never get over that. You'll never get over it. You would only learn coping skills. And I'm here to teach you how to cope with it. How to get up in the morning and see the sun is still shining. And the birds are still flying. And life is going on. It was a bump in the road. It's not you. It's not who you are. Don't let it define you. It's not you. Now I need for you to ask me questions.
Oh man, I know. I was like, absolutely. First of all, so we got to go back because I was glued. I mean, so you meet different people throughout your lifetime, but you, ma'am, I just need you to know how incredible you are. So like how incredibly touched. I just that is just, I mean, but also just I don't know how I can possibly illustrate just the level of just everything. I mean, it's a level of inspiration that you convey, but also just your courage, your power, your grace, your everything. So I just think like I'm just blessed I'm even have you in my presence, but then I can only imagine the lives that you have impacted. So I've got to start there. But so thank you. I appreciate you deeply.
Okay.
Absolutely. But I also will say that, yeah, no, I think you've definitely shared a lot. And I appreciate that you shared like with your journey and you connected a lot of the dots for me. So we're going to make sure we connect some further.
Okay.
But I also feel that going back to the childhood, I appreciate that you started there and that you took us back, as painful as that might be, to revisit, just like it was with therapy, as painful as it might be. Yeah,
because I see myself tearing up.
Literally. And I know.
Yeah, and that's what I tell the children. If you want to cry, you cry. My office where children could come in. Absolutely. And they can cuss.
Right.
I said, you want to cuss today? Because see, social workers get upset when kids call you a bitch. You're the professional. You've been trained to deal with that. Right. So I said, go ahead. I'll be a bitch today. Come on, get it out. I allow them to have a voice. And whether it's negative or positive, they got to talk.
I definitely, and I think that is definitely most appreciated because that alone is what struck me the most about what you said. I mean, there was a lot. There was definitely a lot there that I was touched by and moved by, and I'm sure many are as well. But just the fact that you said you were literally taught how to be silent was incredible to me. And so I just feel that, yes. And not only just taught that lesson, but the lesson was reinforced. Yes. So I feel like there was literally multiple ways for that to happen.
Yes, because my father was not a whipping man. My mother was the whipper. My father was a lecturer. So for him to whip was the biggie. That's a big thing.
Absolutely. And this is the same man who provided those same nuggets. I mean, you introduced this exactly with this incredible wisdom that he shares, but then
love him even to today. And absolutely. I wish he had sat down and talked to me and said, come here, little girl, let me tell you something.
Right.
But he didn't. He had to come from his perception of what he needed to do. And I don't blame him. He did what a father, he thought, I know he did something to that man, but I don't know what. They never were friends again. But it's almost like Maya Angelou's story that became mute when she became mute because she thought she killed the man that her uncles killed for raping her. So, and I started reading her when I was about, I want to say maybe early, by 18. Anyway, she was always, when she wrote Why the Cage Bird Sang, that was the first book I read, and she caught me from that.
Absolutely. And I think what was incredible too was you said later though too, like he also didn't speak about the slavery, for example.
Right,
You were like,
right,
you know, but I can understand that because you know what needs to be said. You lived it. You know what I mean? You lived through it. So I think that was remarkable to hear that, like in that instance, you understood his silence, but there were other moments where it really would have helped not to, though, not to have silence, you know. And so, and like you said, and I think you said it right there. He probably in his mind felt like it was handled, just like you said with Maya Angelou. Well, I killed the man, you know, essentially. In other words, I did that. You know,
and they never knew our culture really, and the older people, especially my baby boomers people, they don't know the power of secrets.
Absolutely.
Secrets have power over your life. And if you keep those secrets, it begins to have a heartbeat on you. You don't realize how it is maneuvering and navigating you in life. You don't know unless somebody brings it to your attention. Because I was really angry at the therapist. And now we became such good friends because even after that, we are friends even today, almost like a soulmate friend because we started sharing workshops together and stuff like that. But I'm going to tell you, meeting him was the best thing ever happened to me in opening up, being able to talk. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's incredible too, that like there were different, so the voice that you did not have before that you were not allowed to even express and like being able to do, you then were able to do it later. But it's funny because at first you weren't necessarily open to it. Like you said, you actually met it with opposition. So
and
like,
that's a whole piece of church out because my mother was very religious. And so you went to church and you prayed to Jesus to take everything out. And I was a little girl, and I was very religious up for a while, and that's another separate journey. But it was a little girl, about 5 years old, who had been sexually abused. And I was doing what they call ministering to her, because I was deep in religiosity then. I was ministering to her. And I was telling her how much Jesus loved her. And this little girl looked up at me. I never questioned. When I was 12 or 13, I questioned things about God. And then I was shut down, so I didn't do that no more because I got in big trouble. But this little girl looked at me and she said, then why didn't Jesus stop my daddy from crawling on top of me? And I was getting ready to give her a religious answer, and it got caught in my throat. I could not say it because I hope you can follow me on this. The shock of what she said shook my belief. See if you get that. I didn't have an answer for her. Because why didn't Jesus stop Mr. P?
Amen.
Why didn't Jesus stop my cousin? You see what that 5-year-old did?
Oh, yeah.
The children will teach you now if you listen. She said, why didn't? And I said to myself, Jackie, why do you believe what you believe? And that's when I began to research my belief. And I'm on a whole different plane. But it was that little girl that opened me up to know and think about the answers that I gave children who was hanging on my every word.
Ooh.
That I would be authentic and truthful with them and tell them I know it's hard. I'm not going to tell you to sugarcoat this.
Right.
And be real with them.
Absolutely. Because I also feel that, as you mentioned, I mean, because we all have that little child still inside of all of us, you know, and so like you absolutely, as the advocate that you are, have not forgotten that. And I think what was another thing that was incredible was, so you have your father dynamic. So your father who provided the wisdom, but didn't speak about many things and never whooped you except for the one time, which unfortunately sent you that conflicting message. But then interestingly enough, like you said, on the opposite side, you had your mom who did do the whipping, which isn't always the case. Usually it's a dad that handles the whoopings in most households. It was her.
Now I have
But
to give you an insight on how she affected me because I write a story about my mother that I'm not going to publish because my siblings won't see it the same way, but I'm writing my perception of my mother and then me watching her with kids and everything. My mother, at 4 years old, I learned this when I took care of my mother in her last 3 years when she had Alzheimer's. So in Alzheimer's, she had no filters of her memories.
Oh, wow.
And there she was talking about a memory. She was 4 years old when her mother died. Her father, she had a sister that was 10. Her father started sexual abusing both of them. It was almost like The Color Purple. They were so tight, like Celia and Nettie. And my mother remembered at 4 years old when she had Alzheimer's in her 80s.
Oh my God.
And I had her father picture on the wall, and she said, "He hurt me down there." I said, "He who?" And she said, "Papa," her daddy. And then she went through in Alzheimer's. She gave me every detail as if it was happening that day. Now I'm a social worker taking care of her.
Right.
And now I know the impact on my mother. When he got married again and brought another young woman home to be their mother. And my mother described her as looking at it like an angel. She fell over them and said, "I'm going to be your mother now." She died in childbirth for this man. So there my mother lost another mother that she loved. Her father then, she had turned 10 and her sister was 16. Her father gave her to white people to be their housekeeper and left her there. He gave her sister, Laura, to an old man to marry, and she never saw Laura again. Now, that's my mother's story, and I left a lot out. But understanding her story, I understood then why she couldn't see the damaged little girl in me, because the damaged little girl in her was so pronounced. She didn't see it. Even when I was telling her, "Mama, I don't want to ride with cousin," his name. He's dead now, but I don't want to ride with him. She didn't see the harm in it. And I couldn't tell her. But then I knew why. And then my friend, who is the therapist, my friend, I told him about that. He said, "Yes, you can tell her. Go to the grave and tell her. Go to the grave and say, 'Mama, I understand.' Because now I can understand how damaged her little girl inside her." Now, the reason why I'm telling you and looking this up is that this is generational stuff that affects all families. Families got these great big secrets and stuff, and they don't want anybody to open it. But the healing won't start till it start opening it. You got to put it on the table. You don't stay there. You don't have to stay there. Don't sit in it. You sit in the pain for the moment, and you feel it, and you grow out of it, and then you got to move on.
Absolutely.
Or it'll suck the air out of you. It'll suck your life if you don't. You put it in a compartment, and you can't let it go, but you don't have to view it all the time. And when the memory come up, rephrase it, redirect it. Yeah, I survived that. I'm not a victim.
And I definitely agree, because that's what I feel like it is that with us knowing about those children that are inside of us, those children that live inside of us, all they want is that safety and security, and unfortunately that has not always been something that they've been able to get. And I think what was incredible about your mother as well was that dual role that she played too. So I thought that was another thing that marked me, how she could be this gentle woman to the white children and then come home and play that tough role with you.
She was given to them at 10.
Right. And then had nothing left to give you when she came
didn't
home.
leave there until 17 when she met my father. She married him at 17. So she didn't leave the white folks. She left the white folks to my father. And he was 33 years old. So I love my daddy now, but she married a father figure.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what? We called him daddy, and she did too.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's what I grew up in. I knew my mother was in love with my father. I saw love there. I saw hard work. I didn't see them kiss that much. When we would catch them, they would jump back. They would never show affection.
Right.
But Black people was not taught that they had affection to be shown. You know, Black love was not talked about.
Right.
The amazing couples that had lasted through sharecropping and all this stuck together.
Right.
In bad times, through Reconstruction and all, there was always Black couples that made it. And sometimes you weren't married, you jumped the damn broom. You see what I'm saying? But the commitment is not on a piece of paper.
Right.
It's in your heart.
Absolutely.
And how those old folks lived is something that Maya said, that we stand on their shoulders because they went through the pain so that we can do what we are doing now. And now we have others standing on our shoulders because they're making way. See, you're younger than me. So you're standing on whatever I'm able to give without coloring it up and fixing it up and trying to be academically achieved.
No, ma'am.
I'm not going clinical. I never go clinical anymore. It doesn't work. It's on paper. It's theory.
I hear that. And I also appreciated that you said too that so because of all this, that there is power in shattering the silence and sharing our stories. And I think what I want to also give you space for is to talk about, speaking of that, you wrote 3 books, speaking of stories. So I'm also curious. Yeah. So yeah, how you got to that point, and anything else you want to share about the books?
Well, I dreamed them. This when I did the first one, There's Room. It was 2 little girls that was taken into foster care for sexual abuse, and they were seeing their grandmother. But every time the grandmother would have a visit, the children would go backwards and just be awful. And so they decided they were going to cut. I'm a social worker at that time. I had no power, no clout. I had to do what I was told. And so they said they're going to stop the visit of the grandmother. Now, those children love their grandmother a lot. I went home and I was worried about them. And I dreamed about this book showed up in my dream called There's Room. And it's an old Negro spiritual, and the choir was singing, there's room for plenty or more. And I had kept getting this dream. And I said, what is this dream? So I got up and I started writing it down. And then it showed the book and the words. And the words is that there's always room in your heart for more. No one that you love will fall out. Don't put a seal around your heart. That's what the book tells children. I wrote that for children. When I did Secrets, with Secrets, do you remember when Sandusky and Penn State and that whole scandal came out about Penn State and those young men being sexually abused? Oh, yep. They were grown men. I dreamed about them that night as little boys. And in my dream, it said, he got them through the shiny things. Now, see, I'm not thinking about my past because I had not put that together yet. Remember I said the shiny thing, the 50 cent, the shiny thing?
Right.
Sandusky and all of those, they got those boys with football tickets, basketballs, footballs that they gave them, sneakers they gave them to win them over. And it was a secret they had to keep. But in my dream, and that's my secret book that I published that I'm pushing now. But in my dream, it was the children going through the woods, looking for someone to tell their secret to. So they run up on a few animals, and I'll just give you 2. They run up on a snake, and the snake says, they say to the snake, we're looking for someone to tell our secret to. And the snake says, secrets, secrets. I don't have time for secrets. All I do is slip and slide through the forest all day, and I don't listen to secrets. So they was distraught. And they went through the woods and they began to meet other animals like the bees. Go, bzzz, I'm too busy to listen to you. And finally they get to the chimpanzee that says, you need to go to the owl, because the owl know everything and they could tell you who to tell the secrets to. So basically, the child book tells secrets not supposed to hurt. They're supposed to be fun. And it's a journey, and it's a poem in there, and it's a musical piece that I put in there. Not actual music, but a little tune that I put notes on, and it appears like a song because the birds are singing, and the birds are singing that you must find. So that's where secrets came from that dream. And so then I started paying attention to my dreams. Now I learned in my academia that you basically dream when you have a problem that your soul is figuring out. It has gone into your soul and your subconscious. I like to call it soul. Has gone down into your subconscious and it's percolating, it's marinating. And when you dream, they're very important that you write them down because you begin to put the pieces together and it's giving you a message. That's your subconscious. And it works with you. So for me, the stories came that way. And I'm highly imaginative. So that one, and No King for a Princess, was a little girl that this is the first time I took a young person to co-author this book with me. I counseled her when her father left. She's 9 years old, and her mother asked me would I come. And I said, yeah, I made home visits. I went there and I counseled her. She was so distraught. She loved her father. So fast forward, what led me into this was a year ago, I lost my husband.
Sorry.
He was my soulmate. I met him when I was 34. And he walked into my life, and I write a book about him. It's called My Tall Drink of Water. He was my tall drink of water. I was in pieces when I met him. Because there's another part of my story that was life-altering. During the Miami riots in 1979, there's a little girl that was molested that was 11 years old. And I had just got out of Allen University. I'm trying to put this. I hope you can edit that out. It's not cutting off. Okay, I'm taking it off. I got a new phone and I didn't know how to take it off. I'm sorry. I hope you can edit that part out.
Sure.
My daughter, it was my daughter, 11 years old. Of all people for that to happen, I don't go into her story that much because it's her story. And I don't have a right to tell it. But can you imagine the impact? Because I was going to leave Allen University and go to Florida and be a Spanish English teacher. I had no idea I was going to end up doing what I'm doing. What happened to the Spanish English teacher? And she went ahead of me and with my brother. And I was supposed to come later. And it was a state trooper. And if you look up the 1979 riots, you'll see the story there. So the 11-year-old daughter was mine. Now, this is her story part, and I won't tell that part. But the impact on me was such that I hit rock bottom. And in that rock bottom, I met my tall drink of water. I was 34 and he was 38. He had baggage and I had baggage. And in the book I write, sometimes somebody will hug you so tight and all the baggage in your life will just melt away. He was that to me.
Ew.
I am still reeling. And I wrote the book in 3 months after he died. It's all over the place with grief, but I had to get it out. That's the only way I could do it because I didn't want any sleeping pills. So I started writing. And I wrote about our love, not our sex, our love.
Right.
How he supported me and all the stuff I wanted to do. I could not do this without talking about him because it's still raw. But it's when he died that an awakening happened to me. That I said, all these years, I had worked with over 500 families, and that's the ones I counted because I had them in a database. A lot more. And all this time, those children were me.
Yeah.
Were all me. They were all, I understood that I and them, we are one. We are one in this journey, just like humanity is. It took him dying for me to see. And I saw that. And after he died, I had this flood of ideas of books all of a sudden running through me. So that's where this little one, No King for a Princess, came. And so I called her and I said, she's now 14. I said, would you like to co-author a book with me? I told her about it. She said, yeah. I said, but I created a hero named Rumi. And I said, I want you to be the character Rumi, because I want you to tell other girls how you made it through Rumi being a superhero. And I made Rumi a superwoman hero, because women are nurturing. And we're the only ones, and we're the only ones that can have babies. Okay. Right. So that's where, because if women had to decide going in war, we'd think about it twice, because they're our children. So I wanted the nurturing side of Rumi. So my series of Rumi books is just coming out. That happened right after my husband died, January 4th, 2021. Wow. And I started writing, and I've been writing ever since. So it's an honor for you to ask me these questions. There are so many levels of what I have experienced in my life, but I don't want to start without telling you, none of it is important. The bad is not important. It's when we hold on to it and it drags you down. There's so much good, because there were good teachers telling me that I was smart, but I couldn't hear them. Right. The other one got in my soul. I allowed her in my soul because I didn't have the tools to block it. That's why we must teach our children to talk, to be assertive. We get so upset when our kids speak out. Oh, they're disrespectful. No, let them speak. Now, you may have to do some correction, but let them speak their truth and hear their truth. Absolutely. And that's what parents today need. That's what they need. And many of them abuse their children because they have been abused. It's in generation. We have not taught anybody anything better. If my mama did it, if my grandmama did it, it must be okay. Right. And not just Black people, white people too. White people too. I work with broken white people because I had to learn something in my Blackness. Because in my mind, in my subconscious, I thought, why are there poor white people? It shouldn't be poor white people. They're privileged. What you doing poor? We were poor until I was assigned a job over in Red Bank, South Carolina. And I saw poor white people. And because remember, I worked for white people, but I worked for white people who had money. So I didn't think poverty should be there. Now, I'm an accomplished social worker during this time. So I moved to a county that was maybe, I had about 90% white in my caseload. And I began to see things different. And on the way home, it's this knowing that you have. Some people say God talked to them. I don't say that. I don't put that on God when it's your imagination sometimes. So I say this knowing came to me. Jackie, poverty doesn't come in color. That was a learning thing for me. Right. It doesn't come in color. I changed that day. And there were other phenomenal things that happened on the way, on my path to enlighten me.
And I see that. Well, and I see that, and I can see how that's why I love that, you now have these stories. And I feel like these books that you've written that I feel like that impact is gonna last, that, it's part of your legacy, that you are creating. And I feel like it's wonderful to hear that it was already influenced by other people that have left such incredible legacies, like your incredible husband. And so, and I just think it is amazing just because definitely that, because like you said, there is power in words. I know we like to say that they don't have an impact, like you said, that words will never hurt me. But like you said, no, words can have an impact for good and for bad. But also, I just love that, even though you had some negative messages, you had taken your incredible journey, and now you're doing these incredible things and capturing these incredible stories, but making these books that can touch the lives of many. Yes, and I
train every month. I do Zoom training every month. My participants
and that's what I want to give you too. I want to say, you can tell everybody how they can get in contact with you, because I could keep you here all day, but I want to let them know how they can
Okay,
connect with you.
I am developing. It's already developed where my books are. It's already developed where my books are, but I got more work to do on my webpage. My webpage don't have much trafficking, so I would love to say, "Oh, I'm blowing up." No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I keep at it. I'm 75, and I keep at it
Absolutely.
because I still got stuff that want to come out of me.
Right.
So I created this webpage called
Okay.
bumblebeeproductions.net. Bumblebeeproductions.net. On that, I got a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to do. I'm getting ready to take some of that stuff down. Because when I first put it up, I wanted to do it all. But I need to narrow it down and focus it. And so I do training through it. And of course, my books go through there.
Mm.
And what I wanted to do, I created Out to Pasture. And Out to Pasture is a talk show that I just did registration for, that I'm trying to develop a podcast on to get older people my age to come to. Not to pay, to talk their wisdom, to talk about how you, and I thought that was going to be easy to do. Old people like to talk. No, they like to talk, but not about things that they made it through. And this is what we need them to do. What was your admonition? How did you make it through this life? What did you do? How, all those kind of things that I'm trying to develop. I got 2 older people who was willing to talk 1 hour a week, one time a week, where we just have a discussion about any topic we throw out there. That topic might be that day, how do you feel being retired?
Right.
Because most of us baby boomers will not retire. We still got things we're going to want to do. But we need to talk about that. So I call that Out to Pasture, because when you get old and you're retired, they want to say, well, they're going out to pasture now. And I don't want old people to think that way. You still got something to give humanity.
Absolutely. And I know that definitely, and yes, you are an
And
incredible.
if you can get me, and I give my home number freely. I have no pseudo numbers. It's 803-240-5308. And if you leave a message, I'll get back to you. I have an email, Jackie, there's room. There's one part I forgot to tell you. At 61, I was working with Lutheran Family Services. I started therapeutic foster care there. I did that. I created that. But within the system, I got stories to tell you how you don't get respected for what you know. And I knew I had to leave because my soul kept telling me, but I didn't want to leave because I wanted to retire with a watch and all of that stuff that we want. And in a way, I was kind of forced out by a new person coming in, but it was good because I never would have left on my own. So at 61, I had to leave my job that I wanted to retire to. And then in 3 months, I started my own business called There's Room Incorporated. And I was 61 years old. Only I didn't have CEO experience. I had the field experience. I knew what to do with the service, but I didn't know how to market. And I didn't know how to build a business. I just went with the heart of what I wanted to do. That part was successful. I did so much stuff in the counties with the children and with the families, but I wasn't a very good CEO. So in 2014, I went to Texas to do a keynote address for the CASA, which is Garden and Lighting Program. And I slipped and fell and broke my femur in both places in Texas. I got stuck in Texas for 30 days. And then I had to come back here and be in Heartland for another 30 days. So I had to close my business in 2014. So for 7 years, I had this business. And it wasn't like a business to me. It was a journey. So many people came through there. But you know what? I learned a lot about that business. So now what I do, I have young women and mostly Black women. I haven't done a white woman yet because they haven't come to me. I have other little mentees, white girls that come to me from USC, Sumter Columbia College that I have mentored. So what I do now, I put that back on young women to say, don't wait 30, 40 years to start a business. You can do it now. And here's the mistakes that I made when I started out. So I tell them all the follies, how I fell on my face, so they will not fall into the traps I fall. That's what I do now. And I love it. I love it because that keeps me engaged with young people who keep me young thinking and not being jaded. So that's my information. Let's see, Jackie, there's room. And that is JACKIETHERESROOM
Ooh,
And I'm always,
perfect.
I'm in the email all the time. I just hadn't gotten rid of the there's room part yet, because that was the name of my agency. So I said, I'm going to keep that in my email, because that's the email I had for business. One day I need to change that email, but right now I'm just sailing in it. Okay.
Oh no, and I love it, and it's good to remember. So definitely that there is definitely room, and there's definitely room to connect with you. And I hope others do it, and know the value in it, because there's definitely a wealth of knowledge and all the great resources you could share. But I just think also just connecting with you on a genuine level because of the genuine work you do would be amazing. So I encourage any and everyone, if anything resonated with you, that you definitely reach out and you definitely connect. So is there anything else for the good of the order that you would love to share?
Yes, I would like to share this. I'm not in the downward grieving mode of my husband anymore. He would not want me to be there, and because I felt like I had to follow him, and now I don't. Like I was always like planning for a death, for my death, but now I'm planning for life until it's ready. So my statement, I collect quotes all over the place, but my statement to you is, always be aware of what's happening inside of you. Be true to yourself. Everything will come against you to make you think other ways, but know who you are on the inside. There was a you before anything else. And when you were born, the day you were born, you started dying. You just didn't know when. Don't waste it, because you don't know whether tomorrow will be here for you. On the globe, every day, 1 million people die. And you don't know when you'll be one of those million. So now, grab the opportunity that's before you. It doesn't have to be grandiose. People look for the great big status. You can just be a good mother. You can be a good wife, a good friend. You can clean toilets. I did. Anything, it has honor in it. And that's what I tell you. Be your real self, because that's all you got.
Oh, I can't agree more. And so with that, I'm not going to ruin it. Thank you all, and thank you for the honor and pleasure of being able to have this opportunity to speak with you today. And so, like I said, I encourage everyone else to connect as well, because trust me, you will not regret it.
And
Absolutely.
thank you. You made it easy. I have another interview and I was worried about it, but you made it so easy for me to face.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Have a great day. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.